shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast for this week. Today, our guest is Carmen Johnson, a motivational speaker and global child health advocate. She's known for her entertaining, customized, and research-driven programs geared towards making healthy eating a whole lot easier for parents and their children. Carmen is going to answer every child's burning question, why? Why can't I have sugar? Why can't I have snacks for dinner? Why is everyone always fussing about my food choices? Why? We've all heard those questions from our kids. So trained through the SUNY accredited program at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition as a board-certified health coach, and having spent a decade in pharmaceutical sales teaching physicians, Carmen is bringing her talent for simplifying complicated scientific and nutritional information into an enjoyable and understandable format. It leaves her audience with a clearer understanding of how they can influence their own health with the food choices they're making. As a global child nutrition advocate who has taught thousands of parents and children alike, Carmen has followers all over the world, many of whom are probably listening right now, and the results of her teachings allow her audience to make better choices for themselves, their families, and begin true health. Anyone who listens to Carmen walks away inspired and motivated to start eating healthier, and that's what we would like our outcome to be today. So best of all, you'll all understand why. And we are going to talk about how to win the junk food battles with your kids without fussing, nagging, or fighting. As a parent myself, this is going to be a wonderful half an hour of learning. Okay. So welcome, Carmen.
Thanks so much for having me.
Carmen, tell us a little bit about how you got into nutrition.
Well, that's kind of a funny story, and I love telling it because I was basically sitting in a hair chair one day getting extensions put in, and, we all have things we want to change about ourselves, so I'm trying to have long, beautiful blonde hair, which never worked out, and this girl walks in with a flyer, and it's a mutual colleague of yours, Dr. Dan Pompa, was actually doing a talk in Charlotte where I lived. And she walked in with this flyer and said, you need to come hear this doctor. He cured his nephew of autism. And my ears perked up because one of my sweetest, dearest friends, her son had autism. And I just saw how debilitating it not only was for her son, but for her. She wasn't included in mommy play dates. Her son was, sort of different from all the other children. It just wasn't a normal life for her. And in addition to that, one of my dear friends had a double mastectomy, and my niece, who was 11 at the time, actually developed diabetes. And that's a whole long story about that. But I just sort of saw like disease all around me, and I was going, what on earth is going on? I have to go find out what's happening. And so that led me to go listen to Dr. Dan Pompa talk, and I used a lot of what I learned from him. I took that scientific, heady information he was sharing with all the doctors, and I said, you know what, I can teach this to kids. And so I parlayed what he was teaching and turned that into a kids program, and that's how I got into the schools.
Wow. And that is a tricky thing, to take this kind of complex scientific and nutritional information and make it easy for children. So what makes this different for children compared to what they might typically hear or know about food?
Yeah, well, I think, being a mother, you'll totally relate to this. But I think the big issue we have right now is there's so much nutrition education out there, and children have a ton of knowledge, but they don't have an understanding. Like when you say sugar is bad for you, children know and understand that sugar is bad for them. But the difference that I make in my teachings is that I show them inside the body how sugar actually affects them at the cellular level. So I get really creative and use these bouncy balls to represent human cells, and I walk children through a thought process. It's a very interactive session where I get them to think about every part of their body. And if you think about it as an adult, you think, I have eyes, I have brain cells, I have heart cells, lung cells, skin cells, all of these cells in our body. And so I just pose the logical question after we run through that series and say, well, kids, if every single part of you is made up of trillions and trillions of tiny little cells, don't you think it's important what you feed those cells? And the light bulb goes off. They're like, yes. And that's part of the story. But the way I actually relate my information to the children and help them understand is I use bouncy balls, like I mentioned. I use Play-Doh, and I use I have a demonstration buddy called Bob, and I rip off his organs. So they actually start relating the fact that the food that they eat actually impacts very specific parts of their body. And it's just really neat to see the children sort of come to life when they start to figure all this out.
Well, that makes so much more sense to them than just the word good or the word bad.
Yeah, well, I didn't share this part because I got so busy on the other thing, but I think you'll appreciate this is like, as a doctor, you understand what insulin is and you know what a pancreas is, but to explain how diabetes happens to a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, I actually show them that by eating too much sugar, it's like taking a big wad of Play-Doh. So I take the Play-Doh and I have the little bouncy ball and a water tube straw that, I say it's like a cell's receptor. It's looking for food. And I put that big wad of Play-Doh on the end of the straw. And I say, well, if you eat too much sugar, then your cells can't get the nutrition they're looking for. So that visual alone really impacts the kids. They start to understand, I know Mom said I shouldn't eat so much sugar, but that's what sugar is actually doing in my body. And then this other thing that I made up myself, which I love, is I consider insulin, I relate that to children as Pac-Man. And everybody knows Pac-Man, the little game Pac-Man. And so I just relate to them that insulin is like having lots of little Pac-Men in your body that have to go around working very hard to gobble up all that sugar they're putting in their bodies. And once they kind of put that visual in their head, and I say, if you have too much sugar, guess what? You get pancreatic poop out. Your pancreas just gets too tired, and that's when you can develop diabetes. And that's, that little imagery for the children is so powerful.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you've obviously talked to a lot of children and talked to a lot of parents. What are some of the most common food battles that you hear parents complaining about when they're talking about their kids?
Sure. To date, actually, just to give you a personal milestone, I've talked to over 44,000 people through my videos and in-person presentations, and that's adults and children. And, as a parent, the most common food fight is, I'm a busy parent. My kids want to go through the drive-through all the time, and we've stopped that. I just don't have time, or I did not in the past have time to fight the food battles with them. And children are so addicted to sugar. They get sugar at school. They get candy for rewards in the classroom. Every other day is a cupcake birthday party for someone. It's just absolutely, these kids are on sugar overload. So the biggest battle I see is that parents are, number one, their kids don't understand why they're not supposed to have sugar. If they're thin and they feel like they're healthy, a mom or dad telling their kids sugar's bad for you doesn't make any sense, right? Because the kid's not sick. They don't get it. But when the science is explained to them, they actually start to understand that, yes, mommy and daddy are right. That is the problem. I am eating too much sugar. And this is a little segue, but we go over and talk about the actual limits for kids because they don't know the limits. And I think, we all have sweet tooths. We all want junk food. It's the sugar and salt and all that's very addictive. And those are common battles that parents fight. But what happens is when children understand what's going on inside their bodies, they actually start making different choices. And so when we tell them that, for a child, like an elementary age child, their limit for sugar is, according to the American Heart Association, it should be about 16 grams of man sugar or added sugar per day. And when the kids bring out their Gatorades and their Twizzlers and their juice boxes and they look at all the sugars that they're consuming, they realize right then and there that they are on sugar overload. And then they connect the dots there with, oh, Miss Johnson just said too much sugar keeps my cells from getting the good nutrition. So that's kind of the 1-2 punch in helping the kids sort of overcome their common eating issues is they just need they need someone to bridge the gap between their knowledge and their understanding of healthy eating.
So Carmen, let's talk a little bit about sugar limits for kids. You mentioned that a little bit earlier, 16 grams per day, but expand on that because I think that's something that probably most kids and most parents need to know.
That's absolutely true. I'm glad you brought that back up for clarification. The American Heart Association puts out guidelines every 5 years. And in 2010, I haven't seen the 2015 ones for some reason, but in 2010, the guidelines for consumption for children elementary age would be around 16 grams of added sugar per day. Now, that's not the sugar we find in fruits, bananas, apples, strawberries, fresh fruits. We're not talking sugars that occur naturally. We are talking about man-made sugars that have been added to boxed, bagged, and bottled things that children eat and consume. So again, this is something that's really helpful for the children. They don't know their limits. They're just told you eat too much sugar, but when a child can actually count, and it's a great math exercise, when they can count how many grams of sugar are in one Hershey Kiss, okay, that's 5. How many grams of sugar are in this Gatorade that I'm drinking? Wow, there's 24 or 48 grams of sugar. When children know that 16 grams of added sugar is their limit for the day to stay healthy, and then they start looking at how much sugar they're consuming, they automatically start regulating themselves. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Absolutely. I've even seen some people put visual, sugar cubes there. And they have a pile of 24 sugar cubes and say, would you feed this to your kid? And the parents are, of course, no, we would never want to give them 24 sugar cubes. And then they put the bottle of, Gatorade or pop or whatever it is beside it. And that's exactly what you're feeding your kid.
Yeah, it's shocking. Like a pack of Skittles will have like 44 grams of sugar. A whole little sleeve of Starburst has like 33 grams of sugar. So, I mean, a kid can sit down and eat that in 10 minutes, right? And that's double their sugar intake for the entire day. That's why we have so much disease right now. And if we can curtail that by just giving the kids a little guardrail and a little number to look for, then
and
all the better.
Parents as well, because there is such a lack of awareness even of what is an appropriate amount for kids to have, because it is so prevalent out there today. And you look at what other parents or other families might be doing as a bit of a guide, and we're all kind of lost in what is really appropriate. So that's a wonderful visual, I think, for people. Thanks so much for that. Absolutely. So can you share with us some of the results you've seen? Right. You've done this program for years with, as you said, thousands of people. So what are some of the results that people would expect?
Oh, my goodness. Well, every child is different, and so I can't guarantee one set of specific results for any parent. Is going to be, we're all bio-individuals is a fun little word, and I can just only relate to you the things that I have seen happen. For instance, there was a Title I school that I went to teach in where this large girl was in the 5th grade, and she was much bigger than me. She was probably 5'8", 170 pounds, a large 5th grader. And I just gave the one little cell talk like I do in the kids' videos that I'm offering. And I was only in her classroom for 30 minutes one day. And then I got enrolled to come back and teach a whole half a year in their school the very next year. And I was just curious if anyone remembered me. And so I asked the class, did anybody remember me? And that one girl stood up and she said, Miss Johnson, I do remember you coming and talking about sugars. And I changed my eating habits. And I said, well, why did you change your eating habits? She said, well, the kids were making fun of me because of how big I was. And I got my grandmother to go shop, and she lost like 30 pounds over the course of the next year from just one little nutrition series. That was just one time meeting her. I have little first graders that, once they go through and see the videos, they'll tell their mom. A mom sent me back a note and said, that her daughter loved the M&M yogurts. And she finally went back and just went through the kitchen cabinets and refrigerator after seeing me in her class one day, and she was regulating herself. She was not eating the yogurt M&M. She was not having the extra ice cream cones when she went out with her grandfather. So what's happening is kids are regulating themselves, which takes the pressure off the parents from having to be the bad guy and the heavy.
Absolutely. And, I think sometimes we underestimate what kids are capable of understanding. And you're proof that in putting these sorts of concepts in front of them in clear language, they will make a better decision for themselves.
Oh, they do. There was a teacher sent me this great little one. She said she had an ice cream social, and they had just seen my video lesson in their classroom. And after that, an hour or two later, they're having an ice cream social, and she sent me this cute little parody. It said, Student 1, what do you think is in a gummy worm anyway? And Student 2 said, pure sugar. And then the next kid standing next to him said, no, sugar and food dye. And so the first child spit the gummy worm out of her mouth and into the trash. And that was what one of her teachers sent me as the experience she saw after watching one little video series that I made for them. So
that's amazing.
It's awesome.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your videos. You have some kids' nutrition videos that we're going to be able to share with our listeners.
Absolutely. These videos are for, kindergarten. I made them intentionally for kindergarten through 6th grade. I've had 15-year-olds watch them. I have parents watch them, but it is sort of very elementary kid-centric in that I'm goofy and silly and, things that little 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds would think are funny. A 15 or 17-year-old might roll their eyes at me, but it's still, the concept is good. So anybody can watch it. But I do really gear it towards the younger generation, because the sooner we catch these kids and implement better eating habits for them, the better they're off they're going to be. So again, ages, 6 or 7 through 12, 13, 14 are a great audience for these videos. And March is coming up, National Nutrition Month. March is National Nutrition Month. And so in honor of that, I wanted to share with your audience and you guys these free videos for any parent, teacher, daycare provider that wants to access them and show their kids. They're more than welcome to do so, and hopefully we can help everyone win this battle that parents are facing, trying to keep the junk food and sugars and sodas and candies out of their kids' hands and out of their bodies.
That's wonderful. And we're going to be creating a link for that. It will be at the bottom of the podcast email that we've sent out for those of you who have received that. And for those of you who have found us some other way, just pop over to our website, www.centerforepigeneticexpression.com, and under Carmen Johnson's segment will be the link.
Awesome.
Yeah, so these are really a great tool for those people listening who might be teachers or have access to parent-teacher programs at school. So is there a special video, or do they use the same one?
Everyone will get the same link. These videos are actually housed on our website, which is thehealthykidsrevolution.com. They have a private access, which is the link that we'll send you guys. And anybody can see it. A parent can show it. And just to be warned, I do tell the children in the very beginning of the video to send their parents out of the room. And most kids do get up and say, "Mom, Dad, leave the room. This is for us to watch." So I would ask the parents to watch it on their own before showing it to their kids so that they know exactly what I explained. And then when they let their kids watch it, just leave the room and let the kids just kind of feel empowered. And they come back and they go tell their parents what they've learned. "Mom, you won't believe this. I learned that." Or they just run right to the refrigerator in the pantry and start pulling out stuff that they like to eat and looking at the sugar content. So it's very powerful stuff, and I am really grateful for you guys sharing it. And, the big goal is just to eradicate the disease that we have. And I know I'm a big fan of Dr. David Katz, and he had published the fact that, our kids right now are expected to have a shorter life expectancy than you and I do. So that thought is just daunting. And my goal in life is to help as many people as I can, help as many kids as I can to get better educated around why food matters.
Absolutely. And what a wonderful opportunity to teach them to pay attention, to read those labels, to look for those things, and to understand that just because you're not heavier, or you may be, even a skinny kid, doesn't mean you're healthy. So that is an amazing message, I think, for this next generation to understand. So if anyone listening has heard this and thinks, "Oh my goodness, my sister-in-law wasn't online today and she should really hear this," or they want to share this with some friends, by all means, it is a free podcast. So send this link on to others. The more people who can hear about these opportunities and hear about these life-changing tools will be the better for the entire world, as we have now gotten our podcast into 70 countries and over 35,000 people listening this week. We hope that if this could make a difference for even 10% of those people, it's the beginning of changing the world for the better for the next generation. So again, you can find the podcast online. at iTunes or on our website, www.centerforepigeneticexpression.com. This is your co-host, Dr. Wanda Lee McPhee, and featuring today Carmen Johnson. And one more time, Carmen, can you just give them your website?
Absolutely. It's www.thehealthykidsrevolution.com. And I just appreciate you guys sharing all the information. You're doing a wonderful service for our nation and our world, and I'm just honored to be a part of your program.
Thanks for joining us.